responsible for your audience and what they're saying and doing.
Like Nikocado blaming Charlie for harassment even though Charlie said not to harass. Alright. So, WillyMacShow, one of our favorite guys over here, is fighting the internet today. Why is he fighting the internet? Or, well, not today, but he was fighting the internet a day or two ago. By the time this video is uploaded on YouTube. Why is that? Well, he's responding to this clip. So let's quickly take a look at this clip and understand what is going on.
Absolutely responsible for my audience. If you want to, you know, look out for people who are red flags, it's definitely people who had my mentality that say, I'm not responsible for what my audience does.
I completely agree, and there are so many fucking content creators out there that just leave that at the door. They like turn on, they go in their computer and they do their content and do this, and the second they're offline, they just like let the snowball go down the hill. You are absolutely responsible for your audience and what they're saying and doing and what's happening in different discords and stuff. You have to know.
So you have to be responsible for things that are happening that you have no control over. You don't know what other people, you know, it's like, you've got, even if you, this is so weird to me, that this guy seems like 100% honest when he's sitting here and trying to say, like, oh, you have to take responsibility for someone else's actions on their own time. You know, you fire up a stream, you're responsible for every single person in the world now. Why?
No one else can be.
But
you are the mother that birthed that audience, right? They are a reflection of you. It makes me sick to think of like what you guys might say and do in other channels. That's why I'm like very strict here, right?
Okay. Dumb point. You're not responsible for the audience. You can't be responsible for your audience for a slew of reasons. Mainly that you have no idea what they're going to do when you're done streaming or posting a video or anything like that. All right? You could have, and I guess I'll just read what WillyMac is saying. You are not responsible for your audience unless you directly tell them to do something, i.e. go to harass someone. They're their own people. If you have 100,000 viewers, statistically speaking, one of them is going to be unhinged. Willy's not wrong. How in 100,000 viewers are you supposed to be able to control 100,000 people? That's dumb. You can't do it. You just can't control 100,000 people. You know, you can sit there and go, oh, don't, you know, don't go out and harass people. You know, if I make a video on this, don't go harass that person. But that's you taking responsibility. You know, that's you making sure you disavow anyone that goes out and does that. Ludwig responds, the argument that statistically 1 in 100,000 people will be unhinged, so you bear no responsibility on the other 99,999 is incredibly weak. Keep in mind, he doesn't say anything further than that. And we'll get into some other things in just a second here, but you can't be responsible for one person out of 100,000. All right, this is a let me see. Ninja responded to, yeah, Ninja. You aren't responsible for them, but you have a responsibility to be a good role model and leader, especially when you're talking about sensitive topics. I think what he was saying was you're not responsible for them, but you have a responsibility to make sure like you disavow like bad actors doing bad things in your community. All right. I think that he said this in a bad way because it doesn't really make a lot of sense considering like you've got clips like this of him.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit? How are you not in fucking school?
You know, you've got stuff like that. So yeah, I think this was said like the worst way possible, but I think that it was meant to be more on the lines of like, you know, you aren't responsible for them, but you have a responsibility of setting like the example of what you want to see in your community. So it's like, no, you can't be saying stuff like this. So it's like if I see someone come into my thing and it's like they're saying like insane stuff and I ban them and I say, no, I don't do that here. I think that's what he's saying is like, no, I don't like want people like that. But But anyway, WillyMac responds to it when it's saying, when I made my YouTube account, I didn't realize I signed up to be everyone's dad. 99% of viewers watch a YouTube video and then forget about you the rest of the day. You guys all think you're way more important than you are. He's not wrong. You know, I think a lot of us make content for the enjoyment of the audience and because we enjoy doing it. When you're sitting there and saying, like, I have to be responsible for everyone, suddenly it's like I'm raising the bar tenfold on, like, what I'm doing. Now I've got to micromanage, now I've got to micromanage, like, 1 million people or, like, 1,000 people or whatever. And you just can't do that. You know, when did the responsibility, or when did people suddenly not have responsibility to be good people in real life? When was that the creator's fault? You know, if you're cultivating, like, a community of people who are toxic, that's one thing. There's an argument to be made there that you do have responsibility of your audience. But, oh, wait a minute. Before everyone spazzes out in the replies, remember, I explicitly say this in the original tweet. Unless you directly tell them to do something. You're responsible, especially if you spread misinformation, scams, etc. But not for every random person that follows you. You can't be. It's just not possible. When you're smaller, it's kind of different because you can kind of cultivate what you want to have and what you don't want to have. But when you start growing larger, like WillyMac, who's sitting at 122K subscribers on YouTube, and even more on, and a little bit less, and a lot less than that on Twitter, but still, you just can't be responsible for 100,000 people. Why are content creators held to this unbelievably high standard of being responsible for their audience, but musicians, directors, and video games are largely not anymore? Should rap songs not sing about violence and drugs? Should games not be violent? And he makes a great point here, because it is. It's like, if I play a video game, and and from it I get like, oh, I should go out and kill people. Is that the video game's fault, or is that my fault for thinking like that? It's probably my fault for thinking like that. So, it's like, it goes back to the whole, like, are video games, or do video games cause violence? We're going back to, like, Gamergate back in 2016, and it's so annoying that I have to sit there and say that, because I think that that's, like, the worst way I could possibly say anything, is like, oh, well, we're going back to Gamergate, here we go. And this is Willy's response to Ludwig. Obviously, if 99,999 of your 100,000 viewers are being racist, then you are responsible for that. Exactly what I said. But is that how you would describe iDubbbz? His audience is entirely racist? Bro, these big YouTubers just come up with the most insane made-up scenarios and act like that's my argument. Stop shoving words down my throat. And that is kind of what they're doing. All Willy said was just like, you can't be responsible for 100,000 people. It's just not possible. And, okay, so before we get into this, I think we'll watch this clip of Ludwig responding.
It was someone saying least egotistical content creator, and it was in response to Sans saying this.
Absolutely responsible for your audience and what they're saying and doing and what's happening in different discords and stuff. You have to. No one else can be. You are the mother that birthed that audience, right? They are a reflection of you. It makes me sick to think of, like, what you guys might say and do in other channels. That's why I'm, like, very strict here, right?
And then I think the take from this person, homosexual, was least egotistical creator, because it's very egotistical to think that you have that much of a command over another human. So I think that's where the ego comes in. You are one of many creators that people consume. You don't have that much of an impact. What I view it as is like inaction births action. So this
inaction births action. Oh God! Well, now I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I was watching something that dealt with this topic not too long ago, and it's like, they put it in the most profound way possible, which was something on the lines of like, if you choose not to take action on something, do you still have responsibility for that? If you see someone getting beat up and you choose to not do anything, that's more of a moral standard than that is a golden rule. You should stand up. If you see that, you should go and tell people. That's a should. That's your moral. But there are people out there that don't believe that way. Maybe the person's getting beat up for a reason. Maybe, that reason is entirely fair. You don't know. You know, it's like, should I make sure to go tell the cops when people are boxing? Well, no, that's technically legal because they're doing it inside a ring, inside a specified setting. But I could still, my moral beliefs may think otherwise. Maybe there's no moral way to go and box someone in that idea. But at the same time, if I do take action on that, now I am responsible for that. So if I take, if I take action on someone in my chat, now I'm responsible for that chatter because I took action on it. Inaction can't be action if you never do the action. I guess that's the best way to say it. It's like, if you don't do anything about it, it's like, if you don't do anything about it, how do you expect people to... I don't know. This whole line of thinking just gets me into this like logical loophole where it's like, if I do take action, I'm responsible. But if I don't take action, I'm still responsible somehow. That doesn't make sense.
This person's take was, you are not responsible for your audience unless you tell them to do something. So like, hey, let's go hate raid Pokey, like that Gideon clip from back in the day. But I think if we're talking about Chris Mr. Beast and a bunch of people in my chat start...
Okay, so the Gideon example is fair. I'll give him that. So I'm going to back this up just a second.
Back in the day. But I think if we're talking about Chris Mr. Beast and a bunch of people in my chat start saying, Chris, you yuck Dan's game, or saying maybe more outwardly transphobic shit, and I do nothing about it, then it's...
Okay, but you should be doing something about that, if that's how you feel. You want to cultivate this, like, community of kindness or whatever. Dumb idea anyway. You're never going to be able to cultivate a community of kindness because there's always going to be people that are in there to hate, and not everyone chats. In 11,000 people that watch your stream, maybe only 5,000 of those people are actually chatting. And the other 6,000 are just background watchers. But if people are openly saying these things in your chat, yes, you do have a responsibility of saying, no, I don't want that in my community. And you ban those people. That's not what Willy was arguing here. You're not responsible for your audience unless you directly tell them to do something. They are their own people. Okay? If they're being that way in your chat, are you and you're not saying, and you didn't say anything transphobic or homophobic or whatever kind of stuff like that, and they're being like that, you're not responsible for the way they think in that moment. You're responsible for making sure that they aren't allowed in your community.
It's kind of like a safe space for that type of rhetoric. And that can, but I fundamentally agree with Stans that the community you form based off the actions you take will make it...
They all want to be Dream so bad.
...a more positive place than negative. And I think people are too willing to say, I am not responsible, and having a lot of inaction in not forming a better community. But like, I also don't care to argue it. Like, I stay in my own lane.
And that's why you responded on Twitter.
I try to make sure I have a nice place, but I cannot police the internet, nor do I care to. But
all right, that's the clip. I'm gonna cut him off there. The bearing of that sentence is that people that hold creators responsible for a minority of their audience doing bad things, like Nikocado blaming Charlie for harassment even though Charlie said not to harass, or PewDiePie for the Christchurch shooting, or iDubbbz for saying his own fans were saying the N-word F slur out loud in public. None of these people advocate for doing these things, but fringe minority freaks did them. And then masses of people are trying to hold the creator accountable. That's unreasonable. That's the point. And he's not wrong. It's like, when you really stop and look at it, a minority of people are always going to be unhinged. You can't be responsible for that. You just have to disavow and move on with your day. There's no way of, like, being responsible for 100,000 people. And actually, I like this example a lot. All right, PewDiePie. There was one guy that did the Christchurch shooting. A tragedy. How many subscribers does PewDiePie have? Let's look. PewDiePie. 111 million. Now, this was probably a little bit less back, like, 2019 that happened? Was it 2019 that happened? I think it was. Yeah, 2019. So that was, God, that was a while ago. 4 years ago. And the fact that, you know, I think that's a fair example. 4 years ago, someone, you know, it's like, oh, you know, 4 years ago, this guy, like, shouted out PewDiePie right before doing this. Was PewDiePie responsible for that then? By their logic, yeah. Because he wasn't dictating 100 million people back, or, you know, he wasn't saying, like, oh, no, don't do this. You know, he wasn't being in charge of 100 million people. It's such a dumb argument with such dumb takes. Yes, Ian bears responsibility for his audience enjoying edgy humor because he directly advocated for that. Oh, okay, this is Ryan's thread. This is the Ryan Beard stuff. Complete brain dead moron as well. He's saying that iDub still had influence over the other 99, whatever, and influenced many of them in a negative way. He's not saying that every single one of them is a full-blown racist. You're actually putting words in his mouth. The question really comes down to this. Do you think it's bad to influence people to say slurs? If your answer is yes, then I think it logically makes sense that iDubbbz would bear some responsibility for influencing millions of people. Yes, Ian bears responsibility for his audience enjoying edgy humor because he directly advocated for that. Read Ryan for once. So you had that, and maybe I thought Ryan did another one. Maybe not. Yeah, this one. All right, let me get this up because this is a thread to beat the band. Do you genuinely believe that influencers have absolutely, and anyone that uses influencers is probably subhuman. The only reason we use the term influencer to describe YouTubers and all that instead of creators is because the Paul brothers like popularized that term, and then all the news medias used it against PewDiePie. So now everyone's like an influencer. We're not. We're creators. All right, creators above influencers. And do you think creators hold no responsibility if they influence people negatively? The idea that creators hold absolutely no responsibility for their negative influences is so ignorant. Nobody said that. Obviously, if you spread misinformation, scams, or tell your audience to harass someone, that's on you. I'm just saying I'm not their dad just because they watch my YouTube videos. Stop shoving words in my mouth. You do this all the time, and it's annoying. All right, well, I think encouraging people to say slurs falls under the category of misinformation because that's promoting what I consider harmful information. I'm not saying that is actually stupid. I'd say that it promotes hate speech. I wouldn't say that it promotes misinformation. Thank you, Willie. Because that's promoting what I consider harmful information. I'm not saying creators are people's parents, but they do hold some partial responsibility for their influence. All right. If you notice, okay, parents need to be responsible for their kids. Clearly, this is the problem. Parents will sit kids in front of like an iPad and just give them like free reign of the internet, and they can watch like the craziest crud in the world instead of parenting their kid. Like, this is actually insane. Slurs are not information, you fucking idiot. Thank you, Willie. Very cool. The argument that it's okay to say slurs is information when you try to convince your audience of an argument that is you trying to inform your audience that your perspective is correct. Obviously, whether or not it's okay to say slurs is a subjective argument, but I think subjective arguments can still be misinformation if the argument is harmful. Like saying certain races are inferior is technically a subjective argument, but I would still call it misinformation. Ryan. iDubbbz never seriously said certain races were inferior. That is vastly different than one's sense of humor. One is the biases of white supremacy, or basis, sorry. The other is just an edgy sense of humor that a large portion of the population enjoys, despite race, religion, etc. I'm aware that he never said races were inferior. I was using a hypothetical to explain that argument. Can you still... to explain that arguments can still spread misinformation. Yes, I'm aware that a lot of people enjoy edgy humor, but I agree with iDubbbz that encouraging the use of the N-word for humor is harmful. If you have to use extreme hypotheticals, then your argument probably isn't good. Also, the point on if jokes are harmful literally comes back around to my initial point. There will always be a stupid person who doesn't understand that There will always be a stupid person who doesn't understand you. That's up to parents to correct. I didn't make a YouTube account to be the dad of the bottom 1% of IQs that watch my video. And he's not wrong. You know, okay, we have Augie here with the take. Come on. Why are YouTubers so willing to accept responsibility for every potential problem that could happen? Slave mentality. Just make something people like. All content comes at a cost no matter what. Sitting down watching hours of it alone perpetuates irresponsibility. Who cares? And he's not wrong there either. What was this one? Oh, I had that up already. You know, and this was sent to someone, and I found it out a little bit later. But Ludwig, Mr. Ludwig, the argument that statistically 1 in 100,000 people will be unhinged, so you bear no responsibility on the other 99,999 is incredibly weak. Well, what's this one? I tried drunk driving legally. There is no legal drunk driving. Anything over a certain blood alcohol content is illegal. Oh my god, I tried driving high legally. Well, you're responsible for 822,000 people now. Because if any one of those people do it, you're responsible for every single one of those. Just like you're responsible for the 1.2 million that did this one. Does he believe these arguments? Probably not. Just out of the pure everything, he probably does it. There's no way you can believe this and still be in good faith. You have unlucky timing from Bobalax, and then Diorio responds, it's just not worth engaging with people who it's just not worth engaging with people who expect creators to flog themselves and take responsibility for every individual fan like they are disabled adults under mind control. Like, this position in of itself is a major impasse and most likely means that the person holding it will be incompatible with anything I actually do on any of my social medias, Lamau. So it's genuinely not worth trying to meet in the middle on it. And then finally we have this. So this is in response to this one. Give me a second here. The only time a creator should be taking responsibility for their audience is when they've directed them to do something like harassment, indirectly caused real-world harm through misinformation, promoted a scam / rug pull, or knowingly promoted harmful TikTok escape trends. Or, yeah, I think escape was not supposed to be in there. In these specific examples, most would already know why these are wrong to do, and this should come as no surprise. Outside of obvious stuff like this, you'd just be micromanaging a horde of thousands / millions of people you don't know and how they choose to misinterpret your message. If I or Willy or even Ian made a critical video on someone that person received harassment, I would like to ask that person. I'd ask that person to reflect on why people feel this way. If their answer is "you harass me," I think you're responsible. Then I think I picked the right target. So basically, what he's saying is, if all they believe is that you're doing this for harassment purposes or stuff like that, you've probably picked the right person, because they're the ones not taking responsibility for their actions. You know, and I think that this whole thing is just brain dead in looking at it. If you want to be responsible for your audience, I guess go ahead. When that comes back to bite you in the ass like it did with Dream, George Not Found, you know, almost everyone on that Dream SMP crap, when anytime they stepped out of line, it was like a million tweets trying to cancel them. You know, go ahead. Try and create communities like that. I encourage it. Less of you guys on the internet means more room for us, right? You know, but don't be surprised when people tell you, like, or don't be surprised if, like, something happens in your name, like what happened with PewDiePie. You know, that's a great example of why you can't be responsible for everyone in your audience. Where was that? You know, that's a great example of why you just can't be. You know, that guy did something so extreme. Is that still PewDiePie's fault because he cultivated that audience, apparently? No. He just can't control 111 million people at all times. He might be able to control people in the long run with, like, his blanket actions, like don't go harass someone, or I don't appreciate that thought process in my community. But he can't control all 111 million people if all 111 million people didn't watch that video that he said that in. It's so much more different than that. That's all I gotta say on the matter.